Mobile gaming is a completely different world. Now, instead of those of us who are old enough will remember arcades at this time, were still huge. And the arcade market was completely different than the home market, which is now completely different. Well, the arcade market's not dead, but it's completely different than the mobile market. Now we're looking at, well, you know, this isn't an experience that you're supposed to have in your living room with a fictional plumber for, you know, hours on end. Ultimate Underworld. Who's played Ultimate Underworld? Tell me somebody has. Okay. One of the most underrated games of all time as far as its influence on popular games. This is what, this was the first time that we saw WASD built into a game. So it actually goes back to 1992. I'm just going to bring up really quickly. I have an old Cyrix 5X86 133 megahertz computer at my house that's still running Windows 95, and I put Quake on it the other day. And I was like, why isn't anything working? And I realized this is the original Quake, which is also really important because it was the first game to use 3D hardware acceleration. But it was the arrow keys. It was like the default bind was the arrow keys, and page up and page down actually aimed up and down. I was trying to, how did we ever play games like this? But Ultimate Underworld was, well, there's a lot more in it. Do yourself a favor if you consider yourself like a real big gaming fan, and just Wikipedia it and see how much stuff it brought to the table. It's really interesting. The PlayStation in '94, honestly, I thought it was '95, brought true 3D into the world, or into the home gaming console. Kind of really had been broken into the popular consciousness through Donkey Kong Country, if anybody remembers that, for the Super Nintendo. But this is really important because now we've got 3 dimensions. There was a big change when we went from the technical definition of arcade game, which is you see the entire game on the screen, like a Dr. Mario or a Galaga or something like that. You know, like there's nothing outside of the screen. Does anybody remember the game Defender? Yeah, like Defender was this classic Atari game. A friend of mine worked on Defender, but it had a scrolling screen. Like there was world outside of it, and people just couldn't get that when they started playing it. Also, very interestingly, I just got to talk about the research and development on Defender. They did this thing where they wanted to see how long people would play for because it was an arcade game. And the average time that someone would play Defender was 12.5 seconds. And they'd either just throw their hands up and walk away, or they'd pop a quarter in. But then, as long as 1 out of 8 people will just keep popping quarters in, you know, that's a winner. We need to design things a little bit differently. The Rumble Pack in Nintendo 64, that's really important because all of a sudden we've abstracted gameplay so much that we've started feeling the need to give back physical feedback. It's like now, well, you know, my hockey player just got hit and it jolted. I was playing NBA Live 2010 the other day, and the bad free throw shooters, if they're nervous when they get to the stripe, it shakes more and makes it harder to shoot free throws. I thought that was really excellent use of the Rumble Pack. And then we really get to the modern and like kind of the future of gaming, which is obviously the Wii with actual physical human activity, the iPhone and the accelerometer and iTunes and multi-touch. In the 80s, we started seeing the Atari computers, the Apple II computers, the IBM, even the TRS-80s, like all these computers started coming into the home. So finally, we don't have just military people and their feedback of how it's utilitarian for their purposes, but people who are using it to actually use what they would have called spreadsheets and for entertainment in their home. So we're starting to be able to see, well, this is in your living room now, you're going to use it, and if you don't like it, you're going to let somebody know, or if the test groups don't like it, they're going to let somebody know. It's something that is extraordinarily important we'll start to see from this point on, specifically interactive fiction has really blossomed. The mouse, 1981, of course it was Xerox. Anybody see Pirates of Silicon Valley? And there was a great part in there where they were really worried about what was going to happen with the mouse. This, when I was doing my research, was really extraordinarily funny to me. Atari 5200, first analog joystick. I thought that's really ahead of its time. Did anybody play a 5200? I don't. Really? Is it good?
It's alright.
It
was self-centered, so it's like really infamous.
Oh.
Or maybe that was a 7800 controller.
I never knew they got
a joystick that did self-center and people hated it.
I didn't know they ever got up to 7800. We still have the 2600 at the house. Actually, I was saying earlier, we have the Atari 2600 at the house, and the 8-bit Nintendo, and the Wii, and PS3. But the 8-bit Nintendo still gets the most use, and we'll talk about that. Well, it's right here. The NES gamepad. Does anybody remember actually playing a gamepad prior to the NES?
Yeah, they had Battleship.
Yeah. There was a few of them, and for those of us who are old enough, will remember like the tabletop games. Do you remember those, like the little like Zaxxon tabletop games? And some of those had little paddles, but Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, really is what made it popular. And now we've gone now officially from like, you know, joysticks where you get like real physical feedback to trackballs and paddles where it's still physical and you can even hear it as it's moving. You guys play the Atari 2600, you really have to jam on those joysticks. Like you really have to work at it. Now we get little teeny motions, and we've really abstracted whatever it is that, you know, jumping, even, I don't know if you guys remember the Nintendo Power Pad. We have a working Power Pad at the house. We use that sometimes to be fit. We used to actually physically interact with the data, and then that got more and more abstracted until we were doing these little Nintendo Entertainment things. And, or you think about Street Fighter, it was like sweep forward and low punch for the Hadouken, right? And we're not too far away. I mean, actually, has anybody played Punch Out on the Wii? It, like you're throwing punches, you're blocking, and you're moving. You know, like we've got this fake physical that now gets abstracted again and goes back to the data, which gets re-abstracted for us to physically involve our users in it. And this is one of the most powerful things to get your users stuck on your game. Like you want your games to be sticky, right? Touchscreen computers are becoming, or like where it's just a screen. I think Magnavox has a couple out right now. Are becoming pretty standard. Wacom pads and all that stuff are coming into use.
Have you seen yourself competing with them or trying to work with any intellectual property that caught your eye?
We released, it was kind of a mix of an RTS and tower defense came out for the platform called Last Portal Defense. And then 2 days after we did, somebody else put out one called Portal Defense. And they had a much bigger budget than we did, and it totally crushed us. We literally spent about 3 months in development on it, and then it came out, it sold for 2 days, and then it dropped off. It just disappeared. Our biggest problem so far has actually been pirating of the actual software.